Welcome back, dear friends. Another exciting day at Steamhead, where we're getting on with the Luminescent Zoescope. Look, look at the sheen. Oh, isn't that lovely? So you've seen that, I made that up. That bit is going to, well, that bit is this bit, which is going to stick on the back of the bellows. That's one early job I need to do. And then last night, we had a friend round actually, my sister-in-law, but I just carried on tinkering a little bit. I made this bit, and this is the bit that goes at the back, as you can see. And because I couldn't fix anything together, I'm so pleased I worked it out correctly. So you sort of, with this ply, I mean, it's so, I do love structures. Look at that. Little bit of 10mm square pine, and it is absolutely solid. And again, that's polished up beautifully. So as you can see, this bit is that bit. And during the meanwhile, while I'm getting on with everything else, I thought I'd start cutting out bits like this for the mechanism at the back. Look at that, lovely and spinny. So I'm going to get a 10mm thick acrylic cut out to support the thingy disc. I must remember and learn what it's called. The motor arrived this morning as well, that's going to drive everything. Oh, but first things first, it's just too much, I tells you. First thing is to get that bellows stuck onto the piece of wood, which is now on the floor. This is how I position it. I get some Bostik, this contact adhesive. I've marked it out, because this time we've got these two pieces of wood, so I've marked them out with masking tape, so I've got it all lined up, roughly. I've now put some of the adhesive there, and I'm going to start with this edge. And then once that's together, I can lift the other bits and work my way around. It worked really well on the front, so I'll do it again this way on the back. I think it'd just be too much coating the whole lot, because obviously with contact adhesive, as soon as it touches, you've got a bond. So I think one at a time. This is why I do all this. This is just an absolute joy. I'm so thrilled with how this has come together. That's gorgeous. Absolutely brilliant. I'm so pleased. And that's so much better with the 20mm bits and pieces. What are little specks and things? I think they're reflections, because I can't. Oh no, that's just another crease. That's right. Ah, that is just lovely. I'm so pleased with that. And the fact, as I was saying, I was so rudely interrupted, with the 20mm lengths, the creases, it doesn't start bending in and going all over the place like my one does. And then, as you can see, affixed inside the front to the back on both sides. In fact, it's easier to look at it like that, I think. So the screen is obviously going to go there. It's got its supports ready. It's now nice and rigidly supported from the front and the back, so I know that's really strong. So the next job, it's every job with this, I am loving it, absolutely loving it. A fair amount, a degree of anticipation and concern, but once I've started, because the next job here is to put that on. I've got the bits made up, I've got all the hardware, the brass dome bolts and things, nuts and things. I've got, I can't wait, because the fact is, obviously this is fixed, which is absolutely fine, so this is just purely decorative, but it looks like it has got a function, so you can actually use this to set how far it's focused or whatever. Right, let's get on with that. These brackets even include a little bit of turning of brass. Look, isn't it beautiful? So much fun, drilling and turning and all sorts. Excellent. Oh dear friends, look at that. I'm thrilled with how it's coming on. I keep going on about it. It is so exciting. Those laser cut knobs, 10mm acrylic, tapped and things, that just screw on there beautifully, and the dome nuts. Oh, I did discover, funnily enough, despite all the drawings, that the original hole in the centre was in the wrong place. I'll make a note to wait until I've got them all fixed together, because I measured them carefully, but it was still out. It doesn't matter, because it looks like it's part of the design, and it's the same on both sides. So that is, absolutely thrilled with that. And this, funnily enough, is the stage that I got to with the first. Well, this was stage 2, wasn't it? Because I started off just making this front panel for the screen, And then I thought, well, it needed some bellows, so I added bellows and everything else that you can see there. And then decided, well, why not have some moving things onto the back to attract people over and to make it look interesting. So the next thing, well, there's one of the barometric prognosticator 3s that I'm testing for a customer. It's ready and finished. I'm just making sure that it does actually work properly, keeping me company, so to speak. Now, the next bit is going to be to put this back bit on. So it looks more like that. I'm just lost for words, it's so exciting. So that's going to fit on the back, and then that slot is where all the wheels and everything else go. Even started, look, the first two parts of the mechanical things at the back. God. Don't know whether to put the screen in yet. I mean, it's a bit odd to photograph and video at the moment because it's got a great big hole in it. But perhaps I will put the screen in, because I think I don't need to make any more dust in this front bit. It's all finished. This has turned out to be a really good way to make a bearing holder carrier. I just cut it out of 10mm thick acrylic, stood it up on the pillar drill and drilled with a 4 or 5mm drill bit. Couple of slots. It's not going to be seen, so it doesn't matter what it looks like. And this hole is just smaller than the 13mm diameter bearing I want to use. It could be an awful lot smaller, and to be honest with you, I don't know why it wasn't. But it means, thankfully, if I find the right side, not the one with the bevel, but the straight one, this 13mm drill will find its way precisely to the centre. Like so. Now, the great thing about doing bearings like this, with the idea that you can take it all to pieces if you need to, if I fix these two down so that they're facing each other and the disc is going to go between them, I can then put a 4mm shaft through, fix everything to that, and use a couple of 4mm diameter hole brass tube as a spacer in the front and the back. That then stops the bearings from drifting out and keeps everything else centred, and you end up just having to tighten up one grub screw in the middle to keep it all together. I could have lined them up. I think I'll change the plan by making a little nick, titchy little nick in the bottom vertical with the centre of the hole, because then I can just line it up with the thing, but I didn't do that. So I've put a 4mm shaft through and measured along an extra 2mm, and then lining it up with a square, both front and back, and then I can fix it down. This goes back a long way. I rescued this from an old school I used to work at. And look, it gives you an idea of the age. I just noticed this. Someone's started scratching on it. Kylie Minnow. Isn't that funny? With a compass. There's some board in some DT lesson or something. Just carving that. Oh, so that's ancient. How lovely, and it's still being used to this very day. Pick a part, any part. What do you fancy making? Well, I fancied making this bit. This seemed like a good sort of brackety thing to start with, because then that will define where that goes over there and all sorts of other bits. So I'm working out, obviously, because I've got the CAD drawings but nothing else, and I've just cut out that beautiful looking item. It is an absolute joy. I know it's one of my favourite phrases, but look, it's just pushed together. Isn't that amazing? The little bit at the top, it's just, oh, it's a joy, I tell you. Right, and also, I now need to make a bearing holder at the top. And this is nice. I love doing little drawings and sketches like that, and I'll hang on to all these. 18mm diameter brass rod, you'll say. Well, luckily, this is the last bit, but it'll be big enough. I'm going to turn it down and drill a hole in each end to hold a bearing, one of the standard ones I use, which is a 413.5 or something or other, I don't know. Anyway, let's get turning. Look at that. Isn't that a delight? I didn't video it because I haven't got room to put the camera up, and if I had videoed it, it would have gone wrong. And as this was the last bit of this size brass, I thought it wise not to. Now, you will see, there's a bearing, and because I'm doing this single-handedly, and it's precisions, I told you, precision. Oh, there. So the bearing sits in the end, one in each end in fact. So then I've got the parallel supportive movement to rotate the beautiful copper thing, like so. Then that will enable it all to be supported. I'll get this apart and I'm going to spray this up so it's brass because it looks nice. I found it! That's good, isn't it? I knew I'd had one. I bought two and I bought one, two, whatever. And I've remembered, having found it, that I've got these Imperial bolts and they screw into the end, and then by turning the thread down a teensy little bit they actually fit into these slightly different bearings that have got a 6mm hole in the middle. So it's just ever so slightly larger than 6mm. So that's lovely, and of course that also makes sense because that's what dictated how long that bit's going to be. The fact that's how long the bolt is, if you get my drift. Focus! Oh dear. Right, let's get that together. How lovely. Can't beat a nice coat of spray paint. Now I need to make this pulley to complete this little assemblage. I've been looking at this, I haven't got a drawing of it, so I've quickly drawn out another one, 50mm diameter. And to get the pulley shape, the groove, I remembered that I used a lathe cutter, a lathe tool bit thing. I think this one was sort of like slightly rounded. Clamp that, fix or tighten it onto an M6 bolt, put that in the lathe, and then just offer this up until it's sort of okay. Let's give it a go. That goes on now. Let's turn that round so it's sort of symmetrical-ish. It'd be nice to have some light as well, but never mind, you can't have everything. I think that's about right. Right, safety spectacles on. Let's give it a go. Let's see, Governor. That's not at all bad. I think that'll be absolutely fine. I'll just check it's deep enough. Top tip, lovely. I do like a cunning plan, as you know. Making the nip cow, I looked up, it's a nip cow disc that scans down some sort of image or whatever, using lots of lenses. Now, I didn't want to cut out and make lots of lenses, so I came up with a cunning plan. I leave the protective film on the front and cut lightly around all these. Then I peel it off, leaving all these little raised bits. Then I spray it all brass. Then I peel out the middles to leave clear windows. I thank you very much. Here's the design. Let's get that cut out. Laser cut, engraved around these. I've peeled it all off to leave the bits that I want to spray brass, which I'll now do. I thought I'd be clever and drill holes and things in this, ready for all the bits like the top of the tap and little bits and pieces like that. There's the bit that you view the imaginary limelight through, and I found a lovely chromium plated knob for that. And I thought, why not just start fixing everything together? So I've engraved the funny little signs, I'll clean them up and then start getting on with it. Oh, and the one difference that I've made with this one, because it's for use in a home, is to add a PIR sensor that I'm going to fit in there. On the original one, I designed it for use at steampunk events, so I'd switch it on first thing in the morning and it would attract people to come over and have a look at the stall, and I'd switch it off at the end of the day. But rather than having mechanisms working all the time when no one's there, using one of these is brilliant because basically it switches on when it first sees movement, which is nice, starts up, and then again switches off after, say, half an hour of no movement. So it saves the mechanism and electrotrickery and all sorts of other stuff. And I've got the little sign, the engraving, do not use oil or motor, use only dry graphite. Absolutely nothing to do with this machine, but I just thought it just needed visually a sort of little white bit, lighter bit there. And it's the sort of thing you would find on old machines. In fact, I think I might have found it on a picture, a Googled picture of some sort of old machine. So I thought I'd use that. Now, I hear you cry, How do you get a cast iron effect? Well, you get wonderful spray paint. Look at that. Isn't that incredible? So texture just like. And this one is Rust-Oleum cast iron effect. I've used it before with thrilling results, and it dries really quickly. It's not quite dry yet. It's amazing stuff. And that's going to be the viewer, the little peephole viewer thing for adjusting the lime in the jet of acetylene. Let's broach the delicate subject of flickering flames that boil water, theoretically. I found, obviously you can, lots of those little tea candle things that I use the flickering orange LEDs from are brilliant for lots of things like AM, PM indicators things, but I want something more realistic. And then I saw on the wonderful YouTube BigClive.com channel where he takes all sorts of things to pieces and works out how they work, and he did this and I happened to notice it and I was amazed and enthralled because it's a little bit of plastic just sitting on a small piece of wire with a magnet stuck at the bottom over some sort of coil that just gets sort of pulsed every now and again, and it's illuminated by an LED that's sitting here, so shines up against it. I will show you. Look at that. Forget about that bit. These actually come, they usually come in a sort of wax moulded candle shape, so you only see the top bit. But I tells you, with them sitting on a dinner table in front of you, you really cannot tell that they're not the real thing. They are so realistic. It's such a clever, simple idea. And they run off 4.5 volts. That's great. That's amazing. Obviously I'm going to spray this bit to make it look like cast iron and leave the flame somehow. But I recommend them wholeheartedly. They are so realistic and brilliant to build into steampunk machines. Now it's time to make the furnace assembly, into which very handily the candle effect just pushes firmly. Absolutely lovely. Now I've drilled a hole in it with the wonderful V blocks and a hole saw. Obviously you can't use any sort of fly cutter if you're trying to cut this because it'd be a disaster. So a hole saw just cuts through it beautifully. Now I'm going to make a bottom out of a little row of rivets as in the original one. I've got part of a fitting that I had left over that pushes on, a sort of joint for this pipe. It's waste pipe, by the way. And I've marked on a piece of masking tape a load of 12mm apart marks, which I then stuck round because I've got a dividing head. Now I can simply put that probably on a V block, drill a row of little holes, and I've got these lovely little copper rivets that I can push in and glue. Now I'm going to have to paint all this, so I can't have copper rivets. I'll see if I can work out a way. I'll paint that first and then I'll have a think. They're 3mm rivets, so I'm using a 3mm drill bit and the two V blocks. They're absolutely brilliant. There we are. Now I can paint all this, peel the tape off, paint all this, and then stick the rivets in. How fantastic to leave them copper basically, which I didn't do last time. And they're short enough so they don't actually go right through, so I can still have room to push the candle effect up. If you've got any questions about any of the materials or techniques that I use, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments. I'm happy, only too happy to help and support. I got a bit paranoid last night because I realised, of course, that the paint doesn't stick well to the protective film at all. And I thought, ooh, one stroke of a finger and it might start coming off. So I found I haven't got any varnish, but I've got some clear primer, plastic primer, and I thought, well, that'll do. Spray it over the top and it'll produce a layer to protect everything. So I did that and it's produced this most amazing mottled effect. It's beautiful. I'm so pleased because I really didn't know what was going to happen. It could have been a disaster, but it's worked really nicely. I'm very pleased with that. And the furnace, that's the 1 candle power furnace, is assembled with the rivets glued in. They work perfectly. That just fits perfectly inside. It's 1.5 inch waste pipe. I sprayed a bit of black inside just to make it look a bit sooty and also to make the candle stand out more. Oh, doesn't that look lovely? Excellent. And now what I'm working on is that the limelight thing. I've cut 2 pieces of a tracing paper out. I found a lens that just sits in the top and that happens to be exactly the same 6-inch focal point, whatever it's called, focal distance, that the original one was, and I've cut out this and sprayed it with the dreaded silver. Also rebaited a little bit at the back with lower power laser, and that's going to fit on there. Now this sounds easy, but I tell you, this is fraught with potential disasters. I put 3 pieces of masking tape round, so I've actually got something solid to glue this on. So 3 dobs of super glue, rest that in place. What could go wrong? I'm definitely not going to film this because there is so much that could go wrong. I will get back to you, hopefully. Where's the shininess gone? Oh, there we are. Hopefully when I've managed to achieve it. I could think of no reason why I shouldn't put the back on. So I even drilled the hole in this front bit ready for the flexible copper pipe. So I've fixed it together. How very exciting. And that means I can now start fitting on all the other bits and pieces. And then the doorbell went. What could it be? It's like Christmas every day. It's a load of 42mm Moen Rings. I've ordered them, in the end I ordered them on Amazon. I know I could order them from one of the plumbing wholesalers that I use, but you have to have a minimum order and this, that and the other, so I thought I'd wait a bit longer, wait less time, pay a little bit more and get them delivered. And they have arrived, because I need them. I need one for that one, and another one to support the motor at the back. So that's really good, and I've even managed to drill that out. This is a plumbing fitting, 1.5 inch. Let's go over something. That's better. 1.5 inch plumbing fitting, stop end, that's right, or an inspection cap, access cap. I've just cut it down and drilled holes for the motor. Then this has arrived over the carpet of invisibility. It's a proper, it's a sort of a better quality trumpet that you can actually play for use in schools and things. Obviously I did have a look at getting an old broken trumpet like I've used before, but they've now, eBay people have now realised that if they take to pieces a broken trumpet, they can sell every part for a hell of a lot more. So the cheapest bell, which is that bit I could find, was something like, I don't know, $48 or something, absolutely ridiculous. Whereas this cost me £15. So I can now cut that apart, spray it up, and then arrange it like this one, because that looks lovely. Oh, and it reminds me, I think I was really encouraged to make this sort of machine by the old Bibo and Ben books. I think they're for a French artist. They're amazing. I remember reading them, looking at the pictures when I was really small. I loved the pictures, and I loved all the amazing inventions. I'm sure I remember one, actually it was a huge organ, massive musical instrument, and it had loads of these shapes on. I'm sure that's where I got my inspiration from. They're such wonderful books. Oh, and I did manage to get that glued on without getting fingerprints, glue, whatever, everywhere. So that's great. Now I can put that little shiny screw back in, stick the label on, there we are, quick climb adjustment, and get that fitted on as well. Oh, brilliant. Lovely, that's screwed on beautifully with a lovely shiny chrome bit, and I've got that on. That's so exciting, because this is the start. Once I've got that, I thought to put that so I can get the ballcock valve, and then I can line up where the single power, one candle power furnace can go. Also at the other end I've got the hanging pipe that supplies something to the screen, possibly cooling water or something, I'm not sure, but that looks nice. And a little PIR, that fits in there perfectly. Very pleased with that. It's a little bit tricky gluing this in. I've got the 10mm stud, drilled the hole, but to get it all lined up I'm just using a little bit of blue tack, resting it all on here and hanging it all off the side, which seems to be working, which I'm pleased about. It's the 5-minute epoxy resin. and it is already going nice and sticky, so that's good, or setting. Now this trumpet, let's talk trumpets. I thought this looks odd, it's got a very odd finish to it, and it has been painted. Obviously it was made of white plastic, injection moulded, and then they've painted it black, and I noticed you can get different colours. And I'm very pleased to say that I'm not only the only one that suffers from little specks of dirt and dust and stuff. This is dreadful. You can't see it very easily because it's so shiny. But there's runs, there's drips, there's loads of little specks. Ugh, what a pain. Anyway, I've started off by cutting off the salient part. Obviously, it is almost the same as this one. He's meant to be a proper trumpet, you know, the horn's the same shape, same diameter. The rest of the bell, I believe they call it, isn't quite. It's not 22mm here, where I would like to have that fitting. So I'm going to sort something out. But that's the only cut, and then I can just carry it on, and the rest of it will be roughly the same. So that's nice, except I'm going to have to sand it all to smooth it out, so it's got a nice surface for me painting the paint. How annoying anyway. Metallic colours go very nicely on black base, so that's fine. Do you know when something just isn't right? Sometimes things are just right and you find you cut the pipe, like with the original trumpet horn, and 22mm copper fittings just push on. This just wasn't right, but with the aid of some filing, I have managed to get it okay. I've covered up the ends, masked the ends off. I found a handy receptacle, a holder, to hold this bit while I spray it. So I'm going to spray it. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3. Well, that'll do for a first coat. I've used 140 grit to sand off, well, just roughen up the surface. It'll be interesting to see what that ends up looking like. It's not look beautiful though, as always. Oh, well, these are the lovely Moen Rings. These ones are 42mm diameter, whatever equivalent that is in imperial. They're made of brass and they come in all different sizes, and I believe that they still make them because if you've got really hot water or something like that, or steam or something, you obviously need metal. Or perhaps there's some, I don't know, anyway, I'm not going to launch them into a tirade. They come either with a thread like that and then a base plate that you can screw on, or you can get a female base plate and then you can cut your own studding, the 10mm, it's all 10mm M10 rather, and then you can support it to any length that you desire. Top tip though, sometimes in the plumbing world they want to hang two pipes or more pipes above one another, and they want a double-ended Moen ring, shall we say. Here's a double-ender, look at that. I know that you end up with two of them, but they're useful some sort of rainy day project. But that's perfect because it means that you can do stuff like this. I've got the motor in there, just sprayed that up. There's the bit of studding that's going to hold it up, and then there's a hole at the top to make it look like it's being supplied with steam or some other motive power. Hello Victoria, one day. Well, the other thing I was going to say is they always come with this sort of screw, which is the work of the devil in Victorian era steampunk machines, because they hadn't invented Posi-Drive or Phillips. So you have to use, and this is why I've got a collection of them, a drawer I bought specifically for this. There's another one I've looked after. There's one. Again, these are imperial. It's funny, isn't it? All mixture of metric and imperial. So these are metric and those are imperial or something. But I've got a selection so I can find two proper slotted ones to use. But that's all glued on nicely. Lovely. And look, we have a spinny thing. Oh, the joy of bearings. Isn't that beautiful? That's lovely. That makes me very happy.